around the portrait gallery. The many faces of the Duchess surround her.
And then they picked up the stake. Then they thrust it at the vampire.
Remember about the stone.
Silent Slayer: Vault of the Vampire is a VR game by Shell Games, a developer well regarded for their work behind Until You Fall and the I Expect You to Die trilogy, and I suppose Among Us VR. Although... wonderful is hardly the word I can use to describe them when it comes to this game. These guys have taken a simple concept, operation with vampires, and cranked it all the way through the use of virtual reality that is both figuratively and literally scary, all while making the game easy to approach for anyone new to VR, so no one is safe from being able to experience it. And to make matters worse, they ended up cursing me with a free copy of the game, simply because I jokingly decided to try one of their giveaway keys from their dev stream. Sure, that's my own fault for messing around and finding out, but a free game is a free game at the end of the day, right? How could I say no to my curiosity? Anyway, let's not waste any more time. Let me tell you more about Silent Slayer: Vault of the Vampire. In Silent Slayer, you play as a vampire slayer who's been invited to a castle, though not exactly as a welcome guest, more so housekeeping. A clan of vampires are planning to use a ritual to empower themselves and threaten the land, making them invulnerable to any and all means of slaying. Of course, we can't have that happening lest we vampire slayers get put out of business. Oh, and the whole End of the World Part 2. With the help of this magical book as a guide, you'll slay each member of the clan of Zar one by one, all while doing your best to work quickly, and most importantly, silently. Because while these vampires may be sleeping soundly in their coffins, they're still more than capable of ripping you apart should you wake them, meaning you're effectively disarming a living bomb that will eat you if you set it off. Fun. Not to mention extremely nerve-wracking. How, you ask? Well, one of the strongest aspects of Silent Slayer out of the gate is its presentation. Obviously, a VR game like this is going to look pretty impressive, even more so when you're actually wearing the headset. But it's elevated even more when looking at it in terms of horror and spooks. Each area of the castle you visit is dark, empty, and you're alone with just you, a talking book, and the vampire's coffin. Standing in a dark, empty cell doesn't really seem like an issue at first, but imagine having to work while dozens of paintings stare at you with red glowing eyes. Or how about a room with cages holding decaying skeletons while mysterious figures stand motionless in the distance? Even when your eyes are locked into the coffin ahead of you, your ears aren't safe from whatever lurks in the shadows. Ghastly wails, wooden creaks, bats flying around, and sometimes even a spider will come around to say hi in your ear.
Oh, I hear it! I hear it! 1 second. I hear it. Which ear? I hear it in right. Oh, it's a tiny little thing. Scram! Scoot-daddle! Yeah, it's just a tiny one. But still, it is not fun having a spider like that. Actually. I'm good, bro.
The visuals and sounds come together to create an atmosphere where anything could jump out of the shadows to get you, and you don't know if or when that'll happen, putting you on edge as you try to work on the task ahead of you with precision and focus. Speaking of the task, your job is obviously to slay the vampires situated in each of the castle's 9 thrones, all of which are sound asleep as we speak. I mean, if they're all asleep, surely that makes things easy, right? pull a Julius Caesar on each of them and call it a day. Except these vampires aren't dumb. They set up a bunch of magical traps and deterrents to make the stabbing part practically impossible. Want to open the coffin up? Well, first you gotta pry off all the things holding it shut. Metal crossbars, nails, locks, shackles. Goodness, how are these guys even gonna leave the coffin once they're awake? By the way, as per the title of this game, you're gonna want to remove these things slowly so you don't make any noise. Would be a real shame if the metal scraping gave you away. Even after you get the lid open, the inside of their coffin has a lot of things to deal with. Steel wires, chanting dolls, even magical tentacles or whatever. Well, once those are all taken care of, surely now you can just stab them in the heart, right? Nope. Not only do they have a magic barrier protecting them at all times, but they can move their hearts around their torso. Huh?
They can shift their heart inside the torso to hide their weak point. The Elder has even grown redundant hearts for defense.
Just what kind of vampires are these guys? If they're all asleep, surely that makes things easy, right? Yeah, it's, far from easy. Now is probably a good time to mention that aside from your bare hands for a lot of tasks, you have a special selection of tools to help in your coffin opening and trap disarming. A pry bar for nails, wire cutters, a hook to grab vampiric relics, a relic to find where the heart is inside the vampire, and most important of all, a stake, which will be useful for binding the vampire and eventually driving it into their heart. You'll even find a stone to go with it to eventually hammer it in. You're gonna need all of these and more unless you want to wake the vampire. Make a noise, and they'll notice. Make another noise in that moment, and you're dead. Fortunately, you can make a number of smaller mistakes so long as you put space between them. Stay still, slow down, and breathe if you feel you'll mess up again. You do have a limit to how many mistakes you can make though, so don't mess up. Even with room for error, there are mistakes that are pretty much fatal. Failing the binding ritual, missing the heart with a stake, and running out of time. Yeah, you don't have all the time to slay the vampire. Work quickly, but keep the noise down. Mr. Magic Book here will let you know if time is running short.
Finish this quickly before you're sensed.
Speaking of magic, it's what you'll be using to take down the barrier keeping you from staking the vampire. When all the traps are dismantled, you'll stab the barrier's weak spot and slash through each segment in order. Do it right and you have a brief moment to secure the stab without retaliation. Just don't miss the heart and you're golden.
Congratulations on your first victory. Is your confidence bolstered? The others will not be so unprepared.
In between slayings, you do get a bit of time to breathe as you work on assembling a Bindstone. These arcane artifacts are what allow you to bind a vampire to begin with. They start off simple like a triangle, but get progressively more complex in shape and pieces, to the point you're having to solve a double-sided pyramid with a variety of fragments. They're a really nice pacebreaker from all the scares while trying to disarm the traps and slay the vampire. For that reason, I'm quite glad they were included, and can even be selected in the chapter select. So if I'm feeling like I need a bit more time before I resume my slaying endeavors, I could just toy with one of these first. Silent Slayer is not exactly a very long game, usually running about 2 to 3 hours. Though its low price tag, ability to replay any chapter at will, and the achievements are very much welcomed. It makes it one of the best VR horror experiences to grab if you like to show off your headset to others. Further helped by the multiple save slots you can use and the simplistic gameplay loop. Each chapter likes to introduce 1 or 2 new mechanics to contend with, or adapt on previously introduced ones to keep you on your toes, making each vampire different and ultimately harder than the last. Got the hang of how to pry nails? Awesome! Now make sure you watch for linked nails as you pry. Understood how to cut wires without bumping them? Great! Just don't cut them when they're energized. Are you grateful that the waking idols are only inside the coffin? Well, here's one outside the coffin as you work. Have fun! The only thing I can really knock against the game are the physics. Sometimes when grabbing relics with the hook, they like to bug out in problematic ways.
Don't touch him.
Same with placing items on the table. The game will sometimes try to respawn them if they're misplaced, but since they respawn slightly above the table, they fall down and can collide with other items, potentially leading to a chain reaction of noise that is a guaranteed death. Only thing to do in those cases is to stand still and wait for the sweet embrace of death to come quickly, especially since the game likes to disable pausing when you're absolutely dead. Outside of those issues, there's not much else I can really fuss or complain about. Like, yeah, I may have been treating this game like a curse throughout this video, but I've honestly come to appreciate it. The thought of purchasing this game was something I was saving for the Steam release, and that was only because the coming soon could let me ride the excuse train for longer. Having played it for this video though, it was strangely addicting. Even when I told myself I had enough, I kept going and going. The Bindstone Puzzles kept distracting me from the horrors I just faced. The challenge present with each new vampire made me eager to try things out, and I felt really curious to see how the story would go, even knowing what would happen if I failed. Then again, I guess it's easy to say stuff like that when you instinctively close your eyes seconds before the jump scare even happens. But hey, what do I know? Now we just need a toggle to remove tools that are no longer in use, and potentially add voice immersion to the mix, and I think we have a dangerous horror experience on our hands. Silent Slayer, Vault of the Vampires, available in both Steam and MetaQuest stores for $19.99. Be prepared to slay these vampires in their sleep, or die screaming.
Your performance is adequate. May you continue to learn quickly.